On today's Business Matters, the U.S. job market did better than expected last month. So today, the Bureau of Labor Statistics reported 228,000 positions were added in March. Many economists had forecasted job growth was going to drop to 130,000. Analysts say things could change soon, however, citing recent economic data that predicts layoffs and overall uncertainty. The unemployment rate did increase 1/10 of a point in March, rising to 4.2%. And growth opportunities in the U.S. Zara owner Inditex said it plans to open more stores in the States. The U.S. is Inditex's second largest market. Its CEO said the company has not seen any drastic changes to sales in any of its key markets lately. Last month, he expressed that he was optimistic about continued growth in the U.S. despite tariffs. He noted that Inditex sources its products from dozens of countries and is well positioned to adapt to new tariffs. As a result, he said Inditex plans to keep its prices stable. Stellantis is offering its employee discount to the general public. The Chrysler parent confirmed that it's extending the program to the wider market on some new models. The automaker says buyers can choose the employee incentive price or take current cash incentives being offered. The Stellantis program covers vehicles from this year, including popular Jeep, Ram, and Dodge models. The automaker said the program starts today and runs through the end of the month. This is similar to a promotion being offered by Ford in response to President Trump's 25% tariff on auto imports. And if you aren't in the market for a Ford or Stellantis-owned car, Hyundai is trying to attract buyers as well. The Korean automaker said it's keeping sticker prices on current models steady for the next 2 months. The company said this is to ease shoppers' concerns about the potential impact of auto tariffs. Its CEO acknowledged that consumers are feeling uncertain about prices potentially rising. He said Hyundai wanted to provide them with some stability in the coming months. The program runs until June 2nd. This announcement comes after Hyundai said last month that it will invest $21 billion in the U.S. U.S. chip companies, banks, and oil majors fell sharply on Friday after China retaliated to Trump's tariffs with steep duties. It intensified trade tensions between the world's two largest economies and cast a shadow on global growth. Earlier, I discussed the situation with Joseph Trevesani, senior analyst at FX Street. What's your angle on the market reaction?
Well, President Trump has certainly created a firestorm. I don't think anyone should be surprised that this happened because, after all, he campaigned on this. The salient point here is how long does this last and how do other countries respond? The ostensible reason for having these tariffs imposed like this is to make the tariff regime with other countries more balanced. If that is the response that you get, if the other countries are willing to negotiate changes in the tariff structure, then I think all of the things that you're seeing, particularly in the stock market, they'll reverse. And it's a good time, will be perceived to be a good time to buy. Question is how much pushback you will get on this and how resistant will other countries be to changing their tariff regime, and that is unknown at the moment.
In the short term, is that going to have a negative impact on economic growth, GDP, all that?
Yes, it will have a negative impact primarily for the moment on perceptions. People are worried now about the greater chances of a recession, and that's a justifiable concern. It really is. If this continues for 6 months, you will probably get a recession. Now, maybe not even here, but around the world. Mr. Trump and the administration needs to be wary about that and about the actual effect of what they're doing.
How severe will that recession be?
Again, that depends almost on the same conditions that whether or not the recession occurs, and that depends on how severe the trade war, the trade dispute is. If everyone stands firm and all of the tariffs that Trump has imposed and, say, the retaliatory tariffs out of China and perhaps other countries, if all of those stay in place in 6 months, then I would think it would be a quite serious recession. It would be a real problem. That's really not what you want here. What you want is negotiations from the beginning to change some of the tariffs. Trump's not going to get everything he wants. Neither are the countries on the other side. But that, I think, is not only what he wants, but that's what everyone's hoping for. We'll see if that transpires.
Is the U.S. hurting its relationship with allies?
That's a very difficult question. In some ways it is, in some ways it isn't. And I know that sounds like it's hedging my actual opinion on this. But a number of countries, a number of our allies have had tariffs on our goods that we have not had. The EU is a good example. The EU has, up until now, has a 10% tariff on U.S. cars, and we have a 2.5% tariff, and that's a factor of 4. The EU has said recently, I think von der Leyen said, that they'd be willing to reduce that to 2.5%. So that, in fact, is a problem. It's something that the U.S. has tolerated, basically, since the Second World War. So yes, in the sense of changing something which had pretty much been an accepted fact of economic life, yes, you are going to annoy, if not anger, your allies by doing this. Doesn't mean that it's not the correct thing to do, that there shouldn't be more balanced tariffs, that the European economy, the EU economy, which is a fully developed economy just like the United States, doesn't need nor does it warrant tariff protections for its own industries. The same is true for China. China is a fully developed economy now. It may be an unbalanced in certain areas, but does it really warrant tariff protections on all sorts of industries? The answer probably is no. But is it going to impact the relationship? Yes, of course. His tactics on negotiation, administration tactics, are not the standard type of tactics. They are New York City real estate tactics. And they're quite harsh, and they seem rather bombastic at times. Nonetheless, the goal, I believe, of the administration is negotiation.
Well, okay, Joseph, it's always great to speak with you. Thanks for coming in this morning.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me. It's always a good time.
Gas prices rose again this past week, and it was a bigger jump than the previous week. AAA says gasoline jumped by more than 10 cents to $3.26 a gallon this past week. It says refinery maintenance and the switch to a summer blend are among the factors driving the increase. Last time the national average for a gallon of regular gas was $3.26 was in September. AAA says that's consistent with seasonal shifts, and it says current prices remain below the levels seen at this time last year. China announced today that it will impose a 34% tariff on U.S. products beginning April 10th. The new tariff matches the rate of U.S. reciprocal tariffs of 34% on Chinese exports Trump ordered this week. Beijing also says it will impose more export controls on rare earth minerals. The materials are used in high-tech products, for example, computer chips and electric vehicle batteries. China's Customs Administration also says it suspended imports of chicken from 2 U.S. suppliers, and Beijing announced that it filed a lawsuit with the World Trade Organization over the tariffs. In another Truth Social post this morning, Trump said China played it wrong. In his words, quote, "They panicked, the one thing they cannot afford to do." Taiwan announces at least $8.7 billion worth of financial help for companies and industries to deal with the impact of U.S. tariffs.
This support plan includes financial support, simplified customs clearance process, and tax benefits. Starting with the financial support, our measure is to reduce the interest on trade financing. For exporters, we would provide interest reduction of up to $200 billion Taiwan dollars, thus lowering the cost of capital for manufacturers.
Taiwan's finance minister and Taiwan's premier reiterated the government will support Taiwan's industries financially. The electronics and steel sectors are among the worst impacted. The premier said that there is still common ground between the democracies of the U.S. and Taiwan despite the tariffs. And the U.S. tariff policy is universal and aimed at many countries. Taiwan runs a large trade surplus with the United States and is facing a 32% duty on its products. But the U.S. tariffs do not apply to semiconductors, which is a major Taiwanese export. Taiwan has not announced any retaliatory tariffs. A Japanese semiconductor company is trying to sign big names in tech as it pushes ahead for mass production. Rapidus CEO said the manufacturer is negotiating with Apple, with Google, and dozens of other potential clients. A prototype chip line began partial operation this week at a plant in Hokkaido. It's scheduled to be fully up and running within the month. The company aims to mass produce advanced semiconductors by 2027. Right now, TSMC holds the lion's share of the advanced AI chip manufacturing market. Koike said growing tensions between the US and China have raised a need for other vendors. As many as 2,000 content moderators in Barcelona are out of a job. Local unions say Canadian-based tech company Tariffs sent workers home after Facebook owner Meta Platforms ended its contract. Meta invested billions globally for content moderation, but recently scrapped its US fact-checking program. Workers got an email putting them on gardening leave, meaning full salaries but no work while the company negotiates severance with unions. A Meta spokesperson said it has moved services that were being performed in Barcelona elsewhere and said the company is not reducing its content review efforts. President Donald Trump has delayed enforcement of a law that would ban TikTok while his staff works on a deal to maintain access to the app in the United States. Trump announced today that the deadline has been extended for 75 days. In a social media post, the president said his administration is working hard on a deal to save TikTok. Last year, former President Joe Biden signed a law that required the China-based parent company to sell the app or face a U.S. ban. The law was set to go into effect in January, but Trump delayed it. Friday's announcement comes as the U.S. and China go head-to-head in escalating trade frictions. Trump said he might lower tariffs on Chinese imports if Beijing agreed to a TikTok deal. Layoff announcements for March reached their third highest level ever, according to a new report published Thursday by Challenger Gray and Christmas. More than 275,000 layoffs were announced last month. It's a 60% jump from February and the highest level since the pandemic. The biggest culprit was one particular employer, the federal government. The Department of Government Efficiency announced plans to axe more than 216,000 federal jobs. According to the report, of the remaining 59,000 cuts, the biggest share was in technology and retail. A recent bill in the Florida State Senate seeks to loosen restrictions on teen work hours. Here's how some Florida residents are reacting.
For the owners of this classic America soda fountain in Tallahassee, loosening restrictions on child labor makes some sense.
Getting that half-hour break exactly at 4 hours or exactly at the right time so we don't violate is really hard to schedule.
For other business owners, it raises alarms.
We just hope it's not going to lead to kids having to make a tough decision as to whether they need to work or they can do those, things that everybody wants to do when they're kids.
A bill making its way through the Florida legislature would allow 16 and 17-year-olds to work more than 8 hours on a day when school is scheduled the next day and work over 30 hours a week during the school year without mandated meal breaks, and removes overnight work restrictions on 14 and 15-year-olds who are homeschooled, attend virtual school, or have already graduated. Governor Ron DeSantis argues this will help fill positions left by deported migrants.
What's wrong with expecting our young people to be working part-time now? I mean, that's how it used to be when I was growing up.
Do you believe that this bill would have an impact on a child's development?
Absolutely, because we already are seeing high levels of absenteeism.
Sadaf Knight with the Florida Policy Institute says children can already work longer hours through a waiver process involving parents, guardians, or a school superintendent.
Parents are essentially being excluded from the process of the decision making around how long and how much their kids work.
4 space tourists splashed down off the coast of California Friday after traveling in orbit never attempted before. The Fram-2 mission's unique orbit around Earth in a SpaceX Dragon capsule was the first time humans passed directly over the North and South Poles. It was also the first West Coast landing in SpaceX's 5-year history of human spaceflight missions. Led by cryptocurrency billionaire Cheng Wang, who financed the mission, the Fram-2 crew had been free-flying through orbit since Monday. Popular restaurant chains that have become household names in the U.S. have been running into some issues. Many middle-class Americans appear to be losing their love for dining out. This is based on the number of restaurant chains filing for bankruptcy or closing down locations. NTD Sean Marshall has details.
As America lost its love for dining out, Red Lobster, TGI Fridays, and Buca de Beppo have all filed for bankruptcy in the past year. Hooters filed for bankruptcy just last week. Something is going on. Clarence Otis Jr., the former CEO of Darden Restaurants, which owns chains like Olive Garden and Longhorn, says these brands got dated in terms of their menu offering, the look and feel of the restaurants, and how they reach consumers. Sales are also down at Denny's, Applebee's, Outback Steakhouse, Bonefish Grill, Red Robin, and Cracker Barrel, and they are shuttering hundreds of locations. According to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, restaurant prices have increased 34% since 2019, outpacing the overall growth of inflation during the same period. Streaming videos now teach Americans how to cook fancy meals in the comfort of their own homes and kitchens, possibly getting increased views since the pandemic lockdowns. But there are some bright spots for several casual dining chains. Chili's, Texas Roadhouse, and Olive Garden have avoided the slowdown. They kept prices lower than rivals and invested heavily in labor and restaurant improvements. And they're currently reaping the payoffs. Brinker, the parent company of Chili's, has poured more than $400 million into simplifying Chili's menu, adding more servers and bussers, and renovating restaurants. Chili's sales at restaurants open for at least a year increased a whopping 31% last quarter. Sean Marshall, NTD News.
You can now live in the world's skinniest skyscraper, but it will cost you a pretty penny. The penthouse is located in Manhattan's Steinway Tower, which is located on Billionaires Row and overlooks Central Park. The 4-story home, or quadplex, features 5 bedrooms, 6 bathrooms, and 2 terraces. You will also have a 360-degree view of the Big Apple, and it can be yours for $110 million. As far as the building goes, it's one of the tallest skyscrapers in the Western Hemisphere. It's also the most slender, with a height-to-width ratio of 24:1. And listen up, this release from the boss will be the first time some of his songs have ever been heard. Bruce Springsteen is releasing 7 full-length albums titled Track 2, The Lost Albums, and there will be more than 80 songs, the majority of which have never been heard before by fans. The tracks are from his decades-long career, written as far back as the 80s. The rocker said these were full records, some of them were even mixed, just never heard or released. He said he was able to finish everything he had in his vault during the pandemic, and the final product are these upcoming albums. Springsteen has said that he had been playing these songs to himself and close friends for years, and is glad fans will finally get a chance to hear them. The albums are expected to be released in late June. More footage of the highly anticipated Superman reboot movie has emerged. It shows even more of Crypto the Superdog than previous footage.
The latest sneak peek at Superman includes more of Crypto saving an injured Man of Steel, the Fortress of Solitude, and its robots. Superman flies into theaters July 11th.
Onto markets. Wall Street nosedived for a second straight day on Friday, with the Nasdaq Composite confirming a bear market and the Dow Jones Industrial Average entering a correction. So we're seeing the biggest losses since the pandemic. Bank stocks tumbled with falling bond yields, and all 11 S&P sectors ended in the red. Energy led the losses as oil dropped 7.3%. Tech and China-exposed stocks, including Apple, JD.com, and chipmakers, were hit especially hard due to tariff risks on both design and manufacturing. JP Morgan now sees a 60% chance of a global recession by year end.